Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Bree. Great to be with you again.
Always love to be here. And I actually am really looking forward to having this discussion with you. We've been talking about it for a long time. So we are going to discuss homeoprophylaxis. And for those of you who don't know what that just means using homeopathy as a preventative medicine or immunization to protect against infectious diseases. So we've decided to kind of just off the cuff have this conversation more than come to you guys with all kinds of information or tell you what you should or shouldn't do. This is going to be us talking about what we think, what we have read, the research we've done, what our personal opinions and thoughts are on this. So maybe it's helpful to you. Take it or leave it.
That's right. Yeah. So I get asked about homeoprophylaxis a lot. You
Yeah.
know, people want to use homeopathy in place of vaccines because it's like well, sometimes it's one it's usually it's the husband who is like, I really want the kids to have their vaccines, and the mom is like, I've done the research, I don't like it. And so sometimes homeoprophylaxis can be them meeting in the middle.
Right.
And what I really want people to know is that I'm not telling you, again, like you already said, Brie, I'm not telling people what they should or shouldn't do. And there's no judgment here whatsoever, whatever you decide.
Yeah.
But I do just want to present my answer because I get asked this all the time.
Yeah. I also think it maybe, I didn't want to cut you off first, but even before you share that, we're not even saying that it doesn't work. I want to
Right.
be clear. Like
That's right. Yep.
it could definitely, I actually don't know pure personally, or have data to back any of that up.
Yeah.
But this is your opinion. So I think that's great. We get that question a lot. So go ahead, share with us.
Yeah.
What do you
So,
think?
so first of all, many of you know that I studied under Dr. Robin Murphy first. And he taught me that, and these were his words. He said, we don't treat ghosts. That's what he would say. And then he would follow that with, we don't treat something that's not there. So that's what those were
Like
his.
the phantom. We're not treating like
Right.
a fictitious something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. He would say, we don't treat something that's not there. Therefore, we only address symptoms that are presenting. So I don't take a remedy before I go to the dentist to get an x-ray to prevent whatever might happen from an x-ray. I don't take a remedy before, what's another example? I get this all the time. Oh, I don't take a remedy just because well, I haven't been on antibiotic. I have no idea when's the last time,
Yeah.
but if I were to be given an antibiotic and took it, I wouldn't take a remedy just because I have been on an antibiotic. I would wait and see what presents itself because I'm expecting my immune system to take care of whatever it's being attacked with. But if it can't, then the way that it presents itself is how I'm going to know what remedy to use. So first of all, Dr. Murphy pretty much taught homeoprophylaxis is not the way, that we should be addressing our immune systems. So because he taught me that, he was my first teacher, I was like, okay, I took it, right? And then as I started to really learn about people wanting to use homeopathy as like in place of vaccines, I got a book and I started reading about it. And what I found in people is the schedule can be somewhat confusing or overwhelming, and which brings stress and anxiety. And there's just, I truly believe that when you are eating the best that you can, right, getting rest, going outside, doing all the natural healthy things that you can do, and supporting your body with homeopathy every time you get an acute condition, you're setting yourself up for future good chronic health. Meaning, if your child contracts a childhood disease, their immune system should be able to fight through that, and we should allow them to fight through it. It makes them stronger when they fight through an illness. But if they're having trouble, then we address those symptoms with homeopathy.
I completely agree with you. And I actually did some research when I was trying to decide what to do with vaccines when my oldest was young, like a baby. And I don't remember all the details or what it was. But I remember reading this mom's blog of her journey through homeoprophylaxis, and almost like a diary, like she was documenting this is what she was doing, like the protocol, working with someone, um, and then walking through like what was showing up in her son. And I don't know if the purpose was this or if it just so happened that that's the way it went with her son, but he was proving the remedies as they were doing it, and they were mild. It was like a stuffy nose and a little bit of runny nose, or like a slight rash, and it would almost like the idea that you're introducing a little bit. um and I remember I didn't know anything about it at the time. Now knowing what I know, um it does not make a lot of sense to me to use a remedy when the body doesn't need it, right? In any other situation, we tell people not to do that. You
Yep.
want to make sure you choose a remedy. And so this leads back to probably my largest conviction in how we have chosen to make these decisions for our family is I refuse to make the decision, oh my word, the decision out of fear. And
Yep.
I think for me, and honestly, I wouldn't say this in general because I do think the compromise between parents is a really good point that you made. That sometimes it's like the lesser of two evils, and I wouldn't even call it evil. It's just a good compromise.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of times it's we feel like we have to do something to protect our kid from something bad later. And this feels like, well, vaccines I'm not okay with, but this feels like a safer way to try to make sure I did the right thing to prevent them from getting sick.
Mm.
That is at least how it felt for me. So if I say that and somebody feels that way, um, it just made me reflect on why am I doing anything that I'm doing? And I hear very often that mindset that they're not comfortable with vaccines, but they're scared of their kid getting sick. And so this feels like I'm doing something. And I would just say that that's still coming out of anxiety and fear. And that's not how we want to make wise decisions.
Mhm.
Um, if you came to that out of wisdom and a place of peace and discernment, and you have prayed through that and you feel comfortable and confident, that's different to me.
Yep.
So I would even say lean into your why you would choose
Mhm.
to do this over that. So we don't do that, and I don't do any preventative stuff really um ahead of time. I guess with the exception, okay, so here's what we were talking about too. There's maybe some when we were talking about homeoprophylaxis just now, it was in place of vaccines to prevent infectious disease. If we're talking like, do I ever use homeopathy for something preventatively? I have done, like, my son got braces and I was giving him Arnica and Ruta the night before he went in to get braces.
Mm.
So knowing a procedure was coming up and there would likely be pain,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same thing. I wasn't trying to prevent sickness as much as
Right.
trying to, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great point. So yeah, you weren't trying to prevent um necessarily the pain, but just stimulate his immune system to deal
Like
with that pain.
preparation.
Yeah, deal with that pain and even the shock of, for little kids when they get something like that, they don't have any idea what that's going to feel like. And that's some pretty bad pain.
It's a lot, yeah. So maybe preparation over prevention.
Yes, I
Like
like
a
it.
little
I
tagline. Maybe.
I like it. And you know what? That's a perfect segue into what I was thinking is that I would encourage moms and dads, families to spend their time and their money and their energy on education
Mm,
rather than so to combat that fear of Well, what if they get chicken pox? Well, most of us aren't afraid of chicken pox. What if they get measles? What if
Mm.
they get mumps? What am I gonna do? Well, if you have already spent your time, money, and energy on educating yourself on how to use homeopathy, get a kit, have the resources so when something does pop up, you know what to do, and you have a community of people with you that you can lean on. You can ask questions and you can say, I don't know what to do because I can't think because I'm freaking out because my kid has something.
Yeah.
Then then you're gonna be stronger and better for it rather than throwing. I don't really want to say throwing, using remedies out of fear so that you hope that your kid never gets sick with any of these things when honestly these childhood diseases are strengthening, and yes, they can be scary. And yes, people have died from some of these before. Um, and so I understand where you're coming from. Believe me, I mean, I have a 27-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 16-year-old. I had to do all this research and make these decisions along with my husband, just like you did. We made the decision together. We were on the same page. So when you two are not on the same page, maybe the middle ground could be you, mama, taking classes, get a kit for your birthday or Christmas. And be prepared, like you just said, be prepared instead of try to prevent, be ready for what comes up.
I do remember, doing all the research about all the things and what would I do if this happened. And it felt like there was just a never ending rabbit hole. And I don't know what, maybe it was just the prompting of the Lord, maybe to give me some clarity of how to move forward. But I decided to just start looking into, even on the CDC website, looking into statistically how bad are these diseases and how many, you hear the percentage of how many people die or how you hear a number. Well, we have no clue on the range of statistics what that means. And when I started looking at, first of all, how many cases happen, in those cases, how many are severe? And then even in the severe cases, how many are like so severe they're left damaged for the rest of their life and don't heal all the way. And so then I was like, okay, they're actually very small. Like the risk is so small that your kid would even be severe enough to be hospitalized, let alone have leftover, like damage forever. And then I thought, okay, like here's the symptoms. What would I do? How would I treat that? And what could I treat it at home with? And that was part of what led me to homeopathy to begin with was I mean, I personally feel 100% confident that anything as far as infectious disease goes, I am properly equipped at home to manage in the normal realm. I'm not opposed to bringing my kid in if they need that. I do believe there is a time and place for like Western medicine and for hospitals. Um, but most of the time, kids don't need that. We don't. And I do think doctors are even getting more on board now in general. Like depending on where you live, I brought my son in, my first son when I wasn't sure, not as confident, brought him in. And they told me, well, unless these few really dangerous things happen, take him home and just take care
Mhm,
of him and stay home. And I was surprised, like, okay, thank you for not helping me. That's what I felt like at the time.
mhm,
And so I think some doctors are also like, not everything has to be treated with
right.
homeopathy or allopathic medicine. But anyway, I feel good about supporting their bodies. I don't remember totally where I was going with that, except for look into the risk. Can you manage it at home and be prepared?
And you know what, backing up to the statistics that you were talking about, when you researched that, and there was a small percentage that actually were severe. But what we don't ever know is in that small percentage that was severe, what is their history? What is the
Yeah.
person's history that's sick? What is their parents' history? So, those kids maybe were living off of Pop Tarts and Doritos, and their parents smoked in the house. I
Or
mean,
even, you know what? Like I think this too, at the beginning of illness, very often, and when you're used to using allopathic medicine, you suppress right away. So when their body responds with a fever, when their body is actually fighting, we suppress that. We suppress their immune
Oh, yeah,
response.
yeah.
And so by doing that, if it is a more serious illness, it's thriving. The
So,
body is not responding. So when it shows again, it's huge.
so I definitely don't want that, what I just said, to come across as like, oh, well, if you were one of those, if your kid was one of
Right.
those, you're a terrible parent and you probably weren't feeding your kid well. That's not what I meant at all. But we don't know their history is really what
There's
I'm trying.
missing
So,
things we don't
so
know.
that's right. So they could have been really sick already and then couldn't, work through that thing. Or I love what you just said. They could have actually been healthy, but the fever was suppressed. Therefore, their body couldn't express the thing, and then they got in trouble. Yeah,
Right.
all
I
kind of
mean,
stuff.
and we also, I don't want to get our podcast in trouble or anything. So hopefully, if anybody's listening in, fine. But we also know that the COVID statistics, we know those are, I know personally people who were marked down as like some kind of COVID complication, and they didn't even
Oh,
go in for that. It had nothing to do with the fact that they had COVID. And so,
that's
I mean, let's just put that out there that I don't even know that I 100% trust those statistics
numbers.
to
Yeah.
be accurate.
Yep. Didn't even think of that. Yeah, that's good.
So,
So I have in the past used Thuya
mhm,
around, before flu time to help me, to help either make sure that I don't get the flu, or that my body is strengthened enough to fight through that if I did get it. But I haven't done that in a while. I haven't done that in several years now, but I did that for maybe a year or two. So you might see that sometimes in some of my information, the Thuya protocol, and you can find that in my viruses guide. So I have a free, it's free, viruses guide, and you can find that on my website under the free resources tab, and you can see just kind of how to address viruses as they come up, flu especially. And then also, though, I have a viruses course, and there's a kit that goes along that matches that course. We have got you covered in the preparedness for illness.
your virus course is amazing too. Like it's great. And the fact that there's a kit that goes along with it. Um, so that's really wonderful. I also just thought though about even through your protocol. Um, you started that because you had seen a pattern that you were getting the flu
Every
all like
February.
regularly. And so I would even consider that a little different.
That's true.
Where I've never done the through your protocol actually, but I haven't gotten the flu all the time or on a regular enough basis that I felt like, okay, something's not totally right here. I also thought about, people with chronic seasonal allergies that are like debilitating may
Mhm.
start something like carb or allergy protocol earlier in the year,
Right.
but it's because there is an
That's
actual issue
right.
that we've seen.
That's
So
right.
I do think the homeoprophylaxis is specifically in place of vaccines to prevent infectious disease
It's
is
unnecessary.
a unique thing. Unnecessary is what you said. Yeah.
That's what I think. I think it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think that's a good way to put it. Unnecessary. So we welcome questions. You guys know if you listen here, if you um email us, comment somewhere, if you watch the YouTube video and you have experience. We also mentioned before we even recorded, we love the discussion. So we happen to agree. We tend to agree on most things. Um, but we know a lot of people who think differently than us and practice differently, and that's welcomed and fine. So we just wanted to share because Melissa, you do get that question all the time. So now you have um Melissa's
Yeah.
here
An
forever.
episode. So now we can share this episode in our classes. When the question comes up,
Yep.
I can give a short answer and move on. And then you can say, listen to this whole episode.
Here's all of these words. Yeah.
Good,
Thank you.
good. Yes. Please comment, like, share, if you know someone that could benefit from this information. And thanks again for joining us.